Hi. To be explained later here. Now, some of you that have watched my videos, the few videos that I have up at the moment, may notice that I do a lot of gaming. Now, I didn't go to school for gaming. It's just a hobby that I have fun doing with, and I hope that through YouTube I can get paid for. But what I primarily went to school for was film. The art of filmmaking, screenwriting, understanding cinematography, the meaning behind shots, writing, beats, how beats work, what beats are effective, what the A story and B story should be, how a movie should be made, and what makes good storytelling. Is it the visuals? Is it the writing? Is it the acting? Or is it all three? Commonly, it's all three. With this said, I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm gonna sit down and review a movie. Now, unfortunately, I've only seen this movie once. I don't have the luxury of going to the movie like 5 times in a row in order to review it. I'm just doing it off of what I remembered. So this is gonna go pretty quick, hopefully. I'm just gonna point out what I liked, what I didn't like, what I think worked, and what I think didn't work. And the movie I'm going to talk about today is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, Spider-Man is a character that I hold very near and dear to my heart. It was actually the very first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe and James Franco that got me into movies in the first place. Like, yeah, sure, I watched movies, I pretended I was the characters, but I never really got too into movies until that movie came out. I still have my old Spider-Man toy that has the magnets in it to this day, and I'll probably put a picture of it up in the background of this review because of the whole content ID stuff I don't want to deal with because I don't know how it works. Anyway, Spider-Man Homecoming. Overall, it's a great movie. And fair warning to you now, I am terrible with spoilers because I don't care about them. To me, it's not a spoiler if I don't give you the context in which it happens, which is pretty much everything that precedes it. If I tell you how a movie ends, I don't think it has as much of an impact because of all the stuff that leads up to it. Alright, so Spider-Man Homecoming. Overall, it's a great, fun movie, and I love it for it. And the thing that I love more than anything about it is that it wasn't your basic Marvel movie like I felt Doctor Strange was. It did a lot more with the storytelling because in a way it was like a modern teen movie. It was like a modern teen movie. You start off with a flashback featuring Michael Keaton's Adrian Toomes the Vulture at the end of the first Avengers because apparently Marvel agrees that Age of Ultron isn't worth revisiting often as the first Avengers movie. Um, but we start off with a flashback focusing on Adrian Toomes and setting up his character for what he does. Which is goes in, swoops in, steals all this alien tech that Damage Control has been gathering up because Damage Control took all the basically took work from him. So as a result, he takes their work from them, which is pretty cool. But like the movie starts off with Peter Parker, he's all excited. He's all excited recording the events of Captain America Civil War, and we get to see that in a different light. And it's really cool. And there's this focus on the suit. Like Spider-Man does not believe that he has this nice, fancy. Spider-Man just cannot believe that Tony Stark is giving him this nice, cool, expensive suit and that he actually gets to keep it. And this is important because it does seem to be a theme throughout the entire movie. And they actually dedicate a whole line of dialogue to this, and they say it at least like 3 times, which is good. Well, 3 times is the most you should ever reiterate something in a movie, because if you do it more than 3 times, it's just hitting it over the head. It's like when somebody tells you a joke, and like by the third time you're like, haha, but then by the fourth time in the same like 2 hours, it just gets kind of like, dude, what the hell are you doing? It's like breaking a new toy. But there's this theme throughout the movie that's like the suit, if you're the suit doesn't make the man, is basically what they're saying. Because Tony Tar Tony Tony Tark Tony Stark reiterates to Spider a couple times that if you I wouldn't give you the suit if you couldn't be a hero without it, or something along those lines. Again, I only saw the movie once. And I thought that was a very clever theme to be playing around with. And the fact that Iron Man is involved in this movie actually contributes to that theme a lot, because his whole thing is that he has an iron suit that makes him a hero. But Spider-Man, he has like the will and grit to be a hero. And they make it a whole point of it in the movie, because towards the climax, Spider-Man goes back to his old suit and does heroic deeds in that suit, because Tony Stark took the other suit away, because Spider-Man proves that he can be a hero without all these fancy parachutes and 500 different web shooters and the kill mode that's in the suit that Tony Stark made for him. He goes out and he proves that. And the reason I mentioned that it's reiterated like 3 times in the movie, once in the beginning. I believe it's like once in the beginning when he's leaving Tony Stark for the first time, once towards the middle, I don't remember when it was, and then once towards the end where Peter Parker just sort of like gets the Peter Parker is down, he's beaten, He's literally buried under a building, and he's crying out for help, and he sees his old torn up mask just on the ground behind him, and there's this nice shot where it's like the mask and his reflection. It's a little cliche, some people will say, but I love it. I eat that stuff up. And he just thinks that to his head. I can be a hero without the suit, or something like that. And that's where he gets the power to rise up, because that's important. That's something that I always look for in a movie that I really like. What do they repeat 3 times? How this contributes to the overall themes of the movie. Because it's like once to introduce the idea, the second time to reiterate it, and then the third time is where it really pulls through and helps the hero out. Like watch some of your favorite movies, and you'll find something like that. Some type of rules of 3, something that happens in the first act, the second act, and the third act. And if it's done right, they only need to mention it 3 times. If it's done right. Some movies can get away with doing it twice, but if it's only showing up twice, it's likely there's something else. Anyway, so that was really cool. I feel like that's an overall theme of the movie that they really play around with. Even the villain, the Vulture. Vulture has something like that, because like throughout the movie, the Tinkerer is always telling him like, "Hey, I can upgrade your suit if you want. Hey, I can upgrade your suit if you want. To do that one last heist." And he keeps saying, "No, no, no, no. That's too much. We don't need to go that far, because that upgrade is specifically for robbing planes, for stealing stuff from planes, which is what he goes out to do in the end. He tries to steal stuff from one of Tony Stark's automated planes, because they're moving all the Avengers stuff there, and that was going to be his last big score that he didn't need to do until Spider-Man got involved. And that brings us to another point that I loved about this movie, which I really feel was missing from the Amazing Spider-Man movies, was how Spider-Man's actions affect the people around him, and how they connect to everyone. Take, for example, one thing that if you go back and watch the first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, even the third one, kind of, there's this overall sense of like connectivity. Every character is connected in some way, and that's just part of great storytelling. That's part of why a lot of people. I feel that's part of what contributed to Lost success. The TV show Lost's success. Each character connected to each other in some type of faint way. faint way, and we as the audience, we get to see these events unfold because of a character's actions, but the character may not be fully aware about it until later on. Um, but like right before one of the Invincible Ultimate collections, there's actually like a whole paragraph thing from a writer for Lost or something, and he talks about how he feels that's part of what makes a good superhero mythos. A good superhero mythos, that those little connections. Take, for example, in the original Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man wasn't like the only important character there. He had his Uncle Ben who died, and that impacted everything he did. He had friends that surrounded him: Mary Jane, the girl next door, Harry Osborn, the kid that he grew up with and looks out for him. And then there's Norman Osborn, Harry's father, who also looks out for Peter, but Harry mostly looks out for Peter because it seems like Norman doesn't look out for him enough. So he's sort of like giving Peter this. It's a whole thing. But there's this overall sense of connectivity and family, and of course, who could forget Aunt May? There's there's always like some type of connection that keeps them together. And in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I feel like there wasn't enough of a connection to the villains. Like, take for example the Lizard. Dr. Kirk Connors wasn't directly related to Peter or didn't have any direct connections to Peter. He was like a friend of Peter's dad that knew him, and Peter just sought him out. He wasn't like there for his whole life, unlike Norman Osborn, who was someone that Peter knew until he was a kid in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And then you can go into the whole Amazing Spider-Man 2 stuff, but even then, you don't really get to see the same type of like friendship develop between Dane DeHaan and Andrew Garfield in those. But they really did that. But they really sold it here in in Spider-Man Homecoming. In Spider-Man Homecoming, because Spider-Man, he has family with him. He has family with him. He has this Aunt May who's extremely sexy. Uh, yeah. And then you have all of his friends. He has high school. He has to deal with. He has friends there, and they all rely on him to be at this decathlon, and he doesn't make it. Flash Thompson is kind of a nerd in this, which I think is kind of cool. Like, he's a dicky nerd. Um, yeah, which is a very weird sentence to say out loud, a dicky nerd. And he has those connections, is what I'm trying to say. Spider-Man has those connections. He has this whole web of people that he deals with on a day-to-day basis, and they all connect to each other, they all relate to each other. Especially sells it towards the end when we find out Adrian Toomes is Liz's father, who is the girl that Peter has a crush on. And I just thought that was great. That was just perfect. I just loved it. I loved every moment of it, with Tom Holland interacting with Michael Keaton, who Michael Keaton was just being like the dad. It was just being the dad at that point. He wasn't being the vulture. Um, I just loved that, because that just brought me right back to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, with Norman Osborn being the villain, and being the father to Harry Osborn, who was Peter's best friend. It was something like that. And there's a lot of stuff in this movie that reminds me of the Sam Raimi movies, and I'm not trying to say that it is the Sam Raimi movie. No, this is something else entirely. But there's just enough of the, especially the first Spider-Man movie in there, that I think was just perfect. Was just perfect, because it was part of what made Spider-Man Spider-Man. Because it's part of what made Spider-Man Spider-Man, and what I really feel launched a lot of Spider-Man's popularity during the early 2000s. Next time I should probably write all this out and then read from a script. That was cool. I loved Michael Keaton in the movie. He's my Batman. He's my dad's Batman. He's not my brother's Batman, but he is my whole family's Jack Frost. And he was just great in this movie. There's actually this great moment that is a shout out to the cinematography, or at least the storyboarding for the film, where Michael Keaton like realizes that Tom Holland is Peter Parker, is Spider-Man. is Spider-Man, where he's driving Liz and Spider-Man to the homecoming dance, and they come to a stoplight. And that moment where he makes the like realization, or when he starts to like pick up on Peter Parker being Spider-Man, the light turns red, and there's just this red over his face on an extreme close-up shot of him. Like that was just so cool. When I see shots like that in a movie, I just get excited. I'm just a big fan of great cinematography and visual storytelling. And it was done so in a way that it wasn't like cheesy. It was just like it felt natural. It felt natural because they are in New York. They are driving in a car in New York. There's going to be a stoplight, and then the light's going to turn red. It was just perfect timing. I'm not even sure that was planned, but it worked. It worked. It got me. It got me in there. Back to what this is the last thing I'm gonna say about like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man stuff. There are like certain moments that I felt are like directly in reference to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Like when he's first going through the alley, changing into his Spider-Man suit. But since this is like his first time doing this, instead of like the whole Superman rip off the clothes and there's the S and then he just goes up and away, or the Tobey Maguire just rips off the clothes, puts on the mask, and then slings away. He actually like takes off his clothes, and the costume is in his backpack, so he takes the costume out of his backpack, then puts it on slowly, and then he has to put his backpack and stick it to a dumpster, and then he slings off. He's like struggling to do it, and that was just so cool. And there was also a moment with the Vulture that I felt was very reminiscent to the final battle with the Green Goblin in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, where Spider-Man's like talking to Vulture and telling him how what you're doing is wrong, stuff like that. Think of your daughter, and he's like trying to reason with him, and the Vulture just like summons his wing set from behind Spider-Man, and it just reminded me of that scene with the Green Goblin, where he's where like towards the end when he's fighting Spider-Man, they just start to talk, and then he gets the glider, tries to impale him on the glider, right before, and then it all backfires. Well, it doesn't backfire here, but I just thought that was similar, and I thought that was a cool callback. That was a cool callback if it was on purpose. If it was on purpose. But enough about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Let's talk about this movie. It's an overall fun movie, which I feel is good because when you go to a Marvel movie, you expect fun, and that's not a bad thing. There were several callbacks to other films, and my brother's favorite movie is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he was in the bathroom during the whole Ferris Bueller's Day Off scene, where Spider-Man's just running through the fences and running through the neighborhood. That was cool. That was a cool thing. And as much as I love the movie, I do feel that if you are put in a situation where I have to say, does this movie stand up? Is this movie the best movie of the year? No. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. For me, the best movie of the year is a movie that can succeed in visual storytelling. Because film as a medium, as a storytelling medium, is supposed to be a visual experience. One of my screenwriting teachers once told the class that if people wanted words, they would read a book. People wanted just people talking to each other the whole time, they would read a book. So it's part of your job as a filmmaker to tell the story. You can have dialogue, but make sure that like the dialogue isn't telling the story for you. It's the actions that tell the story. And I feel like and some people may say this is a very outdated look at films, but I still feel it rings true to this day. Because I feel like films would be more successful worldwide because language shouldn't be a barrier. And I feel in this film the ability to hear what the characters are saying would impair it. Would impair the overall enjoyability of the movie. That's just my opinion. But I still enjoyed the movie overall. I still love this movie. It's one of my favorites of the year. I'm not going to say the best movie of the year, but probably it's easily one of the best superhero movies this year. Now, since this is a review, I do have to provide criticism, and criticism is sort of commentary to better. Well, I can't think of anything, honestly, because it set out to do what it wanted to do, and it did it so well that despite my one note, I don't think that even matters for this movie. For this movie. So, taking what I said, I don't think that matters for this movie because it's such a great experience to watch. It's such a good genuine movie. It's a fun time. It's a fun time. You'll laugh, you'll almost get a heart attack. You'll want to punch Flash Thompson in the face. As usual, they always find like the most punchable people to play Flash Thompson. This one's a little bit on the less punchable side, but like every Flash Thompson has been punchable. Acting was terrific. Tom Holland did an excellent job as Spider-Man. He just completely captured young young teenage spirit, which I just absolutely love. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Sorry, it's been a very long time since I've had to think critically about a movie, and I'm not sure I can do it as well as I used to. Uh, but if you want to see more movie reviews, please let me know. I'll be happy to oblige. I'll probably practice a little bit more, write some of my ideas down, maybe watch a movie more than once. Uh, yeah, okay. Have a good one.